Hey, I'm Carson,
And I'm Mackenzie.
and we're from Team 5203G Gremlin, and this is a short breakdown for our 2024-2025 design notebook.
So to start out, it's pretty simple. It's just the table of contents. The main things that you need on here is your page numbers, the title of the page, and the dates. Also, we like to include our color coding just because it's easier. So starting out the notebook, we put in a judge's letter. It's just kind of like a little thank you for volunteering, and then it jumps into identifying some of our key aspects of the notebook. This is a really important page because among some of the big notebooks that you see in competitions, having pages laid out and pinpointed for the judges to look at, it helps them kind of see what we want them to see, but also just like our best pages in the notebook. On this page, we also include a little bit about our notebook layout and our color code. And the color code is super big just because also, again, it's an identifier for the judges and just helps them be able to understand what they're looking at a lot better and kind of understand our notebook as well. And we have like a little bit of Meet the Team. It's kind of like a yearbook. It's not really important, but it just kind of helps put a name to a face for the judges, really. And then we have our team goals, pretty self-explanatory. Basically just what you want to accomplish in the season, and you can base it on past seasons or if it's your first season, just what you want to do in the year. And this is a big one. We basically lay out our entire design process. We just put this little map. It's kind of color-coded based on what we do throughout the thing. So each little tier has its own color, but also for this, we just basically use the rubric, and for the rubric, we just use that as our key, and basically, like as our own map for the notebook, everything is just really based off the rubric because the rubric is what the judges use. So if you use that, you can't really go wrong. We also have this budget in here. It looks good for the judges, but also like it just kind of helps, especially if you're one of those big traveling teams. Like we went to quite a few signature events this year. And just so being able to look at those costs and be able to like actually make it make sense on paper is a good thing, a little bonus feature to add. And then we also jump right into identifying the game problem. Pretty simple. All we do is just take little elements and main things from the game that are really important and to the actual robot design. Different things like that your robot's going to be interacting with, different weird rules. Like this year, I know that there's like the plexi limit, just different things to like point out that affect your design process, and just dissect that in a certain way that helps that go smooth. Something that's kind of different that we add in our notebook is the scoring scenarios. We actually take from the V5RC Hub app, we take the scores and we just kind of solo out different aspects of the game and put that on paper and just kind of compare, just to kind of have different priorities on what to focus on and during the match and what mechanisms that we need to have our robot like actually need to do. So that just helps us more kind of on a strategy side of things, just having that understanding. A big thing to add in your notebook is graphs and charts and all that sorts. For us, for game strategies, we kind of did it based on point scoring, what gives you the most points, what doesn't. But just putting that in graph form is great for judges. It's a good visual and it helps people understand a lot easier. We also have little positive and negative charts, pretty simple for our strategies and stuff. And then we jump right into our design process, mostly for the brainstorming. Something that we add in our brainstorming is research. I know some teams don't actually add research, but we do because we feel like that is a huge part of brainstorming because the ideas come from somewhere, right? So just incorporating that into our brainstorming pages helps us stand out a little bit more. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like we just take pictures and QR codes if there's from a specific source, but we do take stuff from like leaks from other teams that we are handed, and obviously those don't have a source, but just pictures and just putting in like credit where credit is due is just an important thing with that. And again, here's just positive and negatives for different general design processes. One thing that we hit really importantly is these design matrices, and they're pretty simple. You just take a specific mechanism, for example, like the drivetrain or the mobile golem mech, and we just take different criterias and we score different versions of that kind of mechanism. And you can be out of 5, out of 10, whatever, it doesn't matter. And just going through this just kind of aligns with what mechanism you end up building, because obviously the higher score should win. And it can play a little bit, like it doesn't have to be exact, but it's just a good thing to have in your notebook. Also to mention in your interviews, like saying the word decision matrix is a buzzword, and so we'll talk about stuff like that in an interview tips video, but it's just a good thing that we like to hit on in our notebook.
And then we get to CAD testing and build and programming pages, and so for that we're actually going to talk about our haunted hang robot, because it's very well documented in that sense. And so for our haunted hang robot, we started off with identifying the problem with more scoring scenarios, and so this is something we do after tournaments, which is super important. And so then once we identified the problem, we needed a new robot. We figured out that the tier 3 was worth it, and so following that we got into a Gantt chart, which is super important also. It helps us keep track of our team and project management, which is something on the rubric. And so Gantt chart is also another buzzword similar to decision matrix. And so in this, we laid out our research, our planning, and brainstorming, and then you can see more of that research. This is a good example of how it's from first instead of X, so it can be from any source. And then we get into CAD. And so the way we do our CAD is we actually have it under select the best solution, because it's kind of like our prototyping. And so we have a little design brief here with some criteria, and then we get into our actual CAD pages. We do our CAD pages a lot like we would do our build pages, because there's a lot of design choices happening in CAD. So you can see these isometric technical drawings we do with parts lists, and also we have exploded views. And so those different types of technical drawings are also super important for judges. They like to see that, and also something that's more unique about our notebook. And then we have kind of build style pages over here on 182, and you can see how that transfers over. We're kind of looking at different criteria, seeing how it's going to work. We have sketches over it. And then we have a little test the solution page, even though it's digital, because we're still testing if an idea is going to work. And once we find out it doesn't work, we go back to the drawing board, we make a new criteria page, and then we have more CAD pages very similarly styled to each other, and we do that process over and over again. This is a rule update page. They're kind of randomly placed because of how they come out, but those are also something that's super important to pay attention to throughout the season. And then we get to our final design, and we, as you can see, there's more pages because it gets more fleshed out. And then we do a final testing page. It hits all the criteria. And so then we create our build Gantt chart, and we get on to actually building. For our build pages at the top, we like to note who's there and also what our goals are. Goals are also something about team management, and so that's something super important to also do. We did it at the beginning when we had goals for the season. We also do it throughout the year when we have goals for different things. And so now we have build pages. It's pretty standard. We have a picture, we have some explanations, we have a couple QR codes if there's testing, we have iterations of our plexi drawings, and then in between our build pages we sometimes repeat the design process, and so that might not happen in some of these build pages, but what will happen is we'll test a solution, and I think it actually happens coming up here. Yep. So we test a solution. Things aren't working quite as we want them to be working, and so we'll identify what the problem is as our first step in the design process. We'll brainstorm some solutions and select the best one, and then we'll get back to building. And here's another example of how that happens. And so mixing in repeats of the design process is also super important, because you don't want to just jump from A to B in a build. You want to make sure that it's really fleshed out of your choices and also why you're making certain changes. And then we have some other stuff once we get closer to tournaments. So we have programming. Programming for us, we like to make sure all our algorithms are written out. So this is for color sorting. Then we have a page for the hang macro. We talk about the different sensors we use. And then we do this for almost all of our routes. So we'll have routing and just kind of point out what does what in the actual code. And we also like to use this thing over here on 283 that shows the front and back of our robot and also the orientation, because we use absolute heading, and so that's something that makes it easier for the judges to understand the way our robot moves. And then we have a bunch of plexi drawing pages. These are super important. We have our plastic layout. We use a lot of plastic. That doesn't really apply to this year, but we focused on it a lot because it was something that was really unique about our team and the way we designed. And then we get into tournament prep pages. So Mackenzie, if you want to talk a little bit about those.
So basically, they mostly focus on skills. So we kind of do prediction scores based on some of our practice scores, but also like kind of what we want to hit at the tournament. Well, this section is not as good, but basically it goes in and you have your skill scores and predictions. We also have a little bit, like a little blurb about strategy and kind of like steps that we're going to take during the match. And then normally we also have, right after that, we put in actually the outcomes from the tournament. So then we'll put in our actual skills and do a little comparison there, and also our
that does happen.
oh yeah, there we go. So there's like our testing, and this is the actual outcomes of the tournaments right after following. We also put in all of our match results. I basically just copy it from RoboSort or RoboScout or wherever, Vexvia, it doesn't matter. And just we kind of take notes, go back if there's a live stream for the matches or if they're recorded by a teammate. Just really dissecting those matches is really important, because obviously you build your robot to compete, and so taking notes on how it actually competes is important to see in its performance. And so we just take notes on that, and we like to list if you have any awards, because obviously your awards show how you've competed, different observations and conclusions that we made. We also like to go a little bit more detailed on what we want to fix with the robot specifically, and so that kind of fuels the design process for the next things after that tournament. So, yeah.
And then our notebook's very repetitive. We actually use template pages. We use Canva to do our notebook. And so notebooks in their nature are supposed to be repetitive because you're repeating the design process. We talk about how we have an iterative design process in the beginning of the notebook. And so that's kind of the whole point of the season 2, is to just keep improving your robot and your design. And so we have template pages for building, for programming, for tournament prep, and we just copy them over and over again. We went through a lot of tournaments in this section, but here you can see like our next hang design. So we repeat a lot of the same process. We go through CAD, we go through into building, we get into testing, we get into fixing the problems, and then again we repeat with another robot there. And so that's basically the whole functionality of our notebook. We also use Flipbook, which we definitely recommend because it gives more of a actual notebook style whenever you're looking through it digitally. And so this is what we actually upload online, and we do that by kind of uploading all the files from Canva. And then also something else that's important to note about the way we manage our notebook is that we usually have 3 to 5 of us working on it at the same time. And so that helps a lot when we're trying to get a lot done in crunch time. If we've been working on programming and we're also trying to balance driver practice and also making any build changes while also updating the notebook. And so that can be a lot. And by being able to divide up the work like that, working in Canva, it's super, super good too. And so, yeah, we also recommend that if you do these color code bars that we have, to do them on the top or on the bottom. It gets really annoying to make sure they're all on the right sides of the pages, and we had to go back a lot. And if you end up needing to add a page in between another page for some reason, then you have to fix all the ones after that. And so it can get really annoying really fast. But yeah, that's our notebook. We linked the link to it in the description so you guys can go look through it.
And also, I want to add before we're done, we don't just keep our notebook fully digital as well. We do print all the pages and put it in a big binder to just have a physical copy with us at tournaments, because I know some of the locals aren't digital submitted. It's really just the big ones that are. And so just having that physical copy is also something nice to have at those tournaments that you do submit digitally, so you can have it in your interviews or have it when you're explaining to different people and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, so we would it would definitely be good for you guys to go through our notebook and learn from it. If you want to look to improve your notebook and your notebook style, our notebook definitely has room to improve. So when you look through it, keep that in mind. But the really important things we would suggest to focus on are going by the rubric, making sure your layout is easy to follow. That's a big thing for the judges because they need to be able to easily find things. They're not going to be able to read everything. You can see that our pages aren't super wordy and they're not super small font or anything like that. They're very easy to read and everything sticks out. We color code stuff and things like that. And so just make sure it's easy to read. But thanks for watching. We hope you guys have a good rest of your summer and then get ready for pushback next year. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the description. Put them in the comment section. We might be slower to respond since we're not competing anymore. So a lot of us aren't super focused on Vex at the moment. But we would love to help you guys with any questions you have, so feel free to leave them down below. But thanks for watching, and good luck in pushback.